This is supply and demand kicking in. This is capitalism kicking in. This is competition kicking in. When one does it, the other will have to follow, and the third will follow, the fourth will follow. Let the market do what it's supposed to do. In the end, though, what's a business going to do? If you force the minimum wage up and they cannot afford to cut employees or their costs or their hours, they will raise their prices. Too many times as entrepreneurs ignore what's happening in the political world because we don't want to get dragged down into the mess. But more today than ever before, we need to have a voice. Otherwise, we're going to be left behind. I started Lurn exactly for this reason. So starting today with Freedom Friday, let me be your voice. What's up, you crazy fighting entrepreneurs? Welcome back to another episode of Freedom Friday here at The Fighting Entrepreneur. This is your favorite person in the world, Anik, Singal, and today I want to tackle an interesting question. And you know what? You know I love to do a lot of data and I like to do a lot of numbers for my Freedom Friday episodes, and I struggled with this one, which made this even more interesting, and that is the debate of the minimum wage. Now, up and until about a week or 2 weeks ago, the debate was hard and heavy and very, very, heated for years now in Congress for raising the minimum wage to $15. Now, unfortunately, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I do know this. The current minimum wage is somewhere around $7 something federally. Lots of states have raised it, and actually I do have some data on what impact that had on the states. But the last time we changed the minimum wage or raised it was 2009. That's 10 years ago. So when you listen and hear that, I got to tell you, the first reaction I actually have is, yeah, we should raise the federal minimum wage because it's 10 years. Cost of living has definitely gone up in 10 years. Okay, so I've had all kinds of thoughts on this topic. And like I said, I've gone out and done a lot of research, but the numbers are still, non-existent. So we were still busy debating $15 an hour federally and having everyone having massive disagreement on that. And then Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib comes along and recently comes out and says, as is what's been happening lately, and now she says $20, forget 15, 20. And that's led to this massive, again, a very bipartisan two-part argument. You've got one side that's just saying this is a joke now. If you're going to say 20, I'll say 25. If you say 25, I'll say 30. Let's just do whatever now. Let's just go crazy. Then the other side is saying, hey, maybe there's a legitimate reason, a legitimate call for $20 an hour. So I got to thinking about it. 15 for me didn't make a big difference because I guess in our business, we are at that level for everybody anyways. I don't run a restaurant. I don't run a business where we have a lot of, people earning a lot less. But I can understand that there is an economic impact that would happen. So out of pure curiosity, I was doing some research for myself, and then I thought I'd film an episode about it. I can tell you right now, $20, I'm sorry, Congresswoman Rashida, I just don't think that's sustainable. I think the economic impact that has on the country is going to be absolutely ridiculous. So I'm going to go over the pros and the cons. I'm going to go over what the arguments of the pros are. I'm going to go over what the arguments of the cons are, and then, kind of sprinkle that with some of my own opinion, because that's exactly what this is. It's opinion. So I was also intrigued last week. This is before Congresswoman Rashida came out with her feelings of the $20 minimum wage. It was funny because about a week and a half ago, right? So one of the first major political figures that was out there really pushing for a hike in minimum wage was Bernie Sanders. Right, we all know that for years now. Bernie Sanders has insisted. Now he's been about the $15, not $20, and it recently came out from people working in his own presidential campaign that said this is ridiculous. He's out preaching $15. We don't earn $15 in his campaign, and so that's obviously a little bit embarrassing. Poo-poo on you, Mr. Bernie Sanders. But what did he do? Well, like any good person, he responded by immediately raising the minimum wage of his campaign to $15 an hour. But guess what the second thing he did was? He cut the hours. What's the net impact? I can sell you one product at $100 or sell you two products at $50 each. What the heck have I made? The same. Right? So he cut the number of hours because let's face it, a business is not run by feelings and thoughts. A business is run by math and numbers. Money. So in any company, we have a little word called budget. And that budget gets applied. You have a certain budget for labor. You have a certain budget for employment by department. Now, it doesn't matter how you split that budget up, but the budget is the budget. The final number is the final number. And if you're going to raise the minimum wage, you're going to decrease hours or cut employment. If you are going to insist that, okay, let's say you're in a business, minimum wage gets raised, you absolutely cannot cut hours. You absolutely cannot cut jobs. You need all those people for all those hours. Otherwise, your business will fall apart. So then what are you going to do? Hey, listen, if you start absorbing all those costs, your profit margins will go down, but maybe your profit will go to losses, right? Contrary to, common belief. Listen, most businesses are not out there creating radical amounts of profit. We always seem to lean on a few companies that are creating billions of dollars to represent the whole of the business and entrepreneur community, but that's not true. Especially early on in an entrepreneurship journey, you're not making a lot of money, you're losing money. And as a government, the tax write-offs that they receive is because the government says we want to partner with this entrepreneur because we know that they're not making as much money right now. We want to help them right now so that as they get bigger, they'll make more and more money, and then we'll be able to come in and collect our taxes from that, or the benefit of what that does for employment, and then they have employee taxes and Social Security and all these things, right? It's a long-term vision. You have to understand the tax structure to be able to really understand why not raising the minimum wage maybe is beneficial to smaller companies. Now, having said that, we, of course, as a country and as a nation and as a people, have to protect our people, right? If you completely eliminate the minimum wage, you're going to have people abusing it. You're going to have people, we don't need to get to a place where we get into like forced labor nonsense and, like sweatshops, right? So, but how likely are we really to have that situation happen in America? Like, it's just not that likely. There is an amazing benefit behind capitalism, and that is supply and demand. Those companies would not get people to work for them. They would go elsewhere. Why do you think that voluntarily companies like Walmart recently raised its minimum wage to $12? It was not asked to do so, but it did it because, well, there was some pressure, of course, but at the same time, that gets them to be more competitive in the labor market. And Amazon, I believe, has raised it to $15, and other companies have come in and voluntarily raised it. I have a few here, wrote them down somewhere. And Bank of America, Target, they've all voluntarily raised it. This is supply and demand kicking in. This is capitalism kicking in. This is competition kicking in. When one does it, the other will have to follow, and the third will follow, the fourth will follow. Let the market do what it's supposed to do. In the end, though, what's a business going to do? If you force the minimum wage up and they cannot afford to cut employees or their costs or their hours, they will raise their prices. See, here's the thing that I want everyone to understand. From what I see, the current proposals from the Democratic side. Now, again, listen, I am not making this a Democrat versus Republican thing. I'm a self-proclaimed, I'm a conservative. I've said that because it's not because of parties I can care less. I'm a conservative because I agree with conservative fiscal policy. I agree with capitalism because I think that's the solution to everything. But the problem that we're currently having, as I did an episode recently where I talked about how would we pay for the $50 trillion in increased government spending over the next 10 years, and I literally did a mathematical it was proof that the eventual impact and the eventual cost of these $50 trillion in additional expenses would actually not fall upon the rich. It was statistically impossible for the rich to pay for it. It would fall on the majority of the population, which is the middle class, because that's where most of the revenue comes from. So in this case also, if costs start to go up for products across the array for many businesses, who's going to pay for that? The common consumer, the middle class. So prices of products will start to go up, which will not, kind of, in a weird way, annihilate the increase in minimum wage. Like if you're making more, but everything you're buying in the consumer market starts to go up, what's the point of making more? So, or the other downside is the cut in hours and the cut in jobs. And so what are the benefits? Let's talk about the benefits because they actually do sound pretty interesting and I was pretty intrigued by them. I definitely agree with there needs to be an increase in the minimum wage. It's been 10 years and I say that we absolutely need to follow cost of living. So the benefits are, A, with more people making more money, assuming that there isn't the negative impact of cut jobs and cut hours, assuming that all stays standard, the increase in the wages would pull about 5 million people out of government entitlement programs where they're getting support from the government, which would directly save taxpayers money. But let me ask you a question. Would that money come back to your pocket? Right? Because you have to spend more money on consumer products because that cost of rising cost of labor will be passed on to the consumer. So now you as a consumer are paying what you are in taxes and paying more for products. The government will save money on taxes because, the government will save money on spending because the increase in wage would mean that there's less people on entitlement programs. But would the government then take that savings in the spending and pass it to you? No. So you as a consumer, you as a citizen will still be spending more. So we take this scary thought of increasing the taxes to pay for the $50 trillion that's already being proposed to add in the next 10 years to our budget deficit. You're going to pay more in taxes, more in consumer product prices. All right, so the benefit of, I love that benefit. And if that could happen, that'd be amazing. I would love it for more and more people to be off of government support and to be on their own. That's the vision, right? That's the dream. The other benefit is that, that's really the biggest benefit. In addition to the fact, of course, that people would be able to afford to live a better life. Some people that are doing labor jobs, they would need to earn more money. Right? And so they would be earning more money. Now, I went out looking for data. And so let me present some numbers for you here. In places and industries where already through either political pressure, through union pressure, through just pressure generally, there are places and industries where labor costs have already gone up. Okay? So let's see here. In the restaurant industry, okay, they said that as the labor costs went up, this report, and by the way, all of my sources are in the show notes. Go to anikpodcast.com, all right? CNBC reported that only 23% of restaurants responded to minimum wage hikes by not making any changes to their business. What does that mean? It means 77% of businesses made changes. What do you think those changes were? Prices, hours, jobs. It's the only changes that would make any sense. All right, so let's see here. Some operators, this goes back to mostly the restaurants, responded to the minimum wage increases by cutting costs. Okay, that's good. That's not bad. I would much rather them spending less money on things and more on people. With 64% saying they reduced employee hours and 43% saying they eliminated jobs. This is CNBC. The data is pretty strong. Okay, but let's keep looking. Can we find more data? So I found this really interesting study done by the University of California, Los Angeles. And I'm just gonna read it for you first, and I want you to listen. So the statewide minimum wage, they did a study on California because California did raise the statewide minimum wage. This is why, by the way, this whole argument over the federal minimum wage being increased is kind of stupid because it's really a statewide issue. And I'll explain. Actually, before I read this, let me explain why this should remain a statewide issue. How unfair and how ridiculous could it be if a small town in the Midwest America where cost of living is far, far less than New York City, if that small town had to bear the cost of New York City? So if federally you raise the minimum wage to 15, or according to Congresswoman Rashida, you raise it to 20, right? In New York City, maybe that makes sense. Consumers are paying a heck of a lot more money for food because they're paying a heck of a lot more money for their houses, their living. They're also going to earn more. It's just the economy drives. It's supply and demand. It's capitalism. The economy rises. You earn more, you spend more. You earn more, you spend more. But $20 an hour in a small town in the Midwest, small town in the South, small town anywhere, where the cost of living is half. How is that restaurant? How is that small business? How is that manufacturing plant? How is that industry going to absorb $20 an hour? They are going to have to significantly increase their costs. Okay, their menu prices are going to double, triple. How is that community going to be impacted by this? This is why this is not a federal state. This is not a federal issue. It's a state issue. Maybe in New York, Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib, maybe in New York, maybe it should be $20. Maybe. But it cannot be in Wisconsin, in South Dakota. Like, it just cannot be. It won't make sense. So anyways, let's look at this study done by in California. Links to these studies can be found at onicpodcast.com. The show notes, it was a Washington Post article, and I'll just read it. The statewide minimum wage in California gradually rose from $6.75 in 2006 to $10.50 in 2017. And it is slated to hit $15 in 2022. A team of economists at the University of California, Los Angeles examined the effect of the hike so far, focusing on the impact on the restaurant industry. This seems to be, by the way, a recurring theme. No matter how many times I research this, it's the restaurant industry that really comes up. Here's what they estimate. The increments in the minimum wage from $6.75 to $7.50, which is only a $1.25 increase, happened in 2007, and then it went to $8 in 2008. Okay, that increment increase from $6.75 to $8 in 2 years. Here's the result. It was estimated to increase earnings in limited service restaurants slightly more than 10%. So people were earning 10% more money. But it reduced the employment by 12%. So the people that still had a job were earning 10% more, but 12% less people had a job to begin with. How is that going to help eliminate people from the government entitlement programs? Because yes, you'll take some off, but then you'll put some completely on because they'll lose their jobs. Unemployment will go up. The bump, then again in 2017, they bumped it from $8 to $10.50. $10.50 minimum wage, California. In 2017, the bump up to $10.50 by 2017 raised earnings in those restaurants by another 20% for those employees, but reduced employment by another 10%. That, guys, it's physics. With every action, there is a reaction, right? Or chemistry. I don't know what that is. All right, there was another one in Seattle. This one was a really interesting one. They did, so I'm going to read it again. Economists from the University of Washington presented a paper on the effects of the minimum wage in Seattle, which is headed towards $15 for all employers by 2021. That paper, publicly released earlier this year, found that on average, the minimum wage increases have caused employers to reduce hours, with a net effect of reducing low-wage employees' earnings by $125 a month. So even if you get to keep your job, you will be reduced in hours, and the total income you earn by the end of the month goes down. Now, these are very limited studies done in very, very small scenarios over a very short period of time. The problem is there hasn't been enough time to study this, and that's why I'm not finding enough numbers. But the early indications are scary. The early indications are not good. Forcefully raising at a federal level the minimum wage makes no sense. Leave it to a statewide issue. But remember, you keep hiking it up aggressively, it is absolutely going to impact the job market. It will raise unemployment and it will cut hours. And our own man, Bernie Sanders, is on the record for having done just that. I don't blame him. It's just how it works. I wanted to read some other little stats of just kind of what groups it would impact. Check this out. Minimum wage workers are disproportionately, can't say the word, young. According to the Pew Research Center, 16 to 24-year-olds make up to 50.4% of minimum wage earners. Despite representing only 13.7% of the workforce as a whole, 24% of minimum wage workers are teenagers. So you are going to have a massive negative impact on our youth, who does not need that money to survive. They're usually living at home, but they won't have jobs. So you really want to start raising the minimum wage at a federal level. You have to start passing a ton of laws alongside of it, which start to literally impose government control over businesses. You'd have to say the minimum wage rate is only raised for people above certain ages. The minimum wage is raised, but a new law is passed alongside of it. No business may cut hours of employees below X hours. We're raising the minimum wage, but dare you as a business cut any jobs? Well, guys, that's just going to start to get ridiculous, and it's not going to work. It's just not how this economy has ever grown in the past or will grow in the future. If you want to increase minimum wage, you need to continue to encourage competition in the field of employment. So find a way to incentivize employment by companies. Find a way to create incentive programs for companies that are doing certain things above certain dollars. Find a way to continue, in my opinion, to embrace the capitalistic approach. And don't do it at a federal level, because employment and minimum wages, it needs to be a statewide or heck, even a citywide topic. It's just not a federal topic, in my opinion. I want to hear from you. What do you think? Again, if you have any other data or numbers, I want to see it. I want to hear it. I'll do another episode about it. I struggled to find a lot of good stuff, but I knew that as soon as I heard Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib say 20, I was like, all right, we're just getting crazy now. We're just starting to say whatever the heck we want to say to appeal to an extremist community. We are talking to a group of people that we want to rile up, to make them loud, but we are not being smart about the economic impact on how this will impact all across the various things. And you know what? No matter how you look at it, all of these policies always come back and impact the middle class. Always. And those are the people that our political leaders say they want to support and help and encourage, but they end up making policies that, through a ripple effect, end up coming back and hurting that class. So what do you think? Hey, listen, come on. Join us at Lurn.com, Lurn.com. We're going to put 10 million people into that platform from all over the world. Us entrepreneurs together are going to change the world, not politicians. All right? Not politicians, because they do stuff like this, man. They don't know. They don't understand. We're out in the field. Come on, entrepreneurs. We're out, boots on the ground. We are the ones doing this stuff. You want to cure world poverty? You want to cure disease? We, entrepreneurs, will do it. And to start, join our community. It's absolutely free. Lurn.com. Go now. Sign up. Absolutely free. Be a part of the movement, or sit by and watch us move right by you. That's what's going to happen. All right. Make sure if you're on YouTube, post comments below. Let me know. I want to hear from you. I want to see your thoughts. I want to see your research. I want to see your data. I will make more episodes about those things. So right now, go to anikpodcast.com if you want to grab the show notes from this. You want to see my sources from this. If you're on YouTube, leave me a comment. Click subscribe. Click the bell icon. Click the thumbs up icon. And guys, let's get engaged in a communication, in a conversation. Entrepreneurs, let's get involved with what's happening in politics so that we can represent and have a voice. This is Anik Singal reminding you when life pushes you, stand straight, smile, and push it the heck back. Talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening to The Fighting Entrepreneur with your host, Anik Singal.